I'd like to dedicate this song to the Manchester Police Force. The British police are the best in the world. I don't believe one of these stories I've heard about them raiding our pubs for no reason at all, lining the customers up by the wall, picking out people, knocking them down, resisting arrest as they're kicked on the ground, searching their houses, calling them queer. I don't believe that sort of thing happens here. Not likely. Sing if you're glad to be gay. Sing if you're happy that way. Hey, sing if you're glad to be gay. Sing if you're happy that way. Pictures of naked young women are fun in tidbits and Playboy, page 3 of the Sun. There's no nudes in Gay News or One magazine, but they still find excuses to call us obscene. Read how disgusting we are in the press. The Telegraph, People and Sunday Express. Molesters of children, corrupters of youth. It's there in the paper, it must be the truth. So try and sing if you're glad to be gay. Sing if you're happy that way. Hey, sing if you're glad to be gay. Sing if you're happy that way. Don't try to kid us, but if you're discreet, you're perfectly safe as you walk down the street. You don't have to mince or make picture remarks to get beaten unconscious, left in the dark. I had a mate who was gentle and short. It was only one evening and went for a walk. Queer bashers caught him, kicked in his teeth. Was only hospitalized for a week. So try and sing if you're glad to be gay. Sing if you're happy that way. Hey, sing if you're glad to be gay. Sing if you're happy that way. Sit back and watch as they close down our clubs, arrest us for mating and raid all our pubs. Make sure your boyfriend's at least 21, so only your friends and your brothers get done. Lie to your workmate, lie to your folks. Put down the Queen's Tell anti-queer jokes. Gay lives ridiculous, join their laughter. The buggers are legal now. What more are they after? Sing if you're glad to be gay. Sing if you're happy that way. Hey, sing if you're glad to be gay. Sing if you're happy that way. Sing if you're glad to be gay. Sing if you're happy that way. Hey, sing if you're glad to be gay. Sing if you're happy this way.
Hello and welcome to the LyingGhostshow on this lovely May 11th, 2013. And today, as shown on the screen before, we will have Baud2Bits and Steven Hawkins on, but not right now. But as now, we have Dprjones and Atheistcoffee.
Hi.
Hello.
So, and the topic for today is homosexuality, vaguely, but that's what the song was for. You have anything? You have any thoughts, DPR?
What, on the issue of homosexuality or the song?
I guess both.
I think the song, interesting enough, I recall that from childhood. I was in my early to mid-teens, I think, when that came out. And what I find instructive to a degree is how attitudes have changed towards homosexuality. To a degree, not entirely, but to a degree they have. I think society, particularly in this country, is more tolerant than it used to be towards homosexuals. That is not to say there are not homophobes around, nor is it to say that there are not homophobic people in other countries, and indeed governments that by virtue of the laws that they pass are obviously still homophobic. So I think there is still a long way to go, but the song, I suppose, made me reflect on the fact that so far as this country is concerned, we do at least seem to have made some progress.
Atheistcoffee, you have anything to say?
Well, along those lines, I guess, I'm Canadian, and we've been a lot more tolerant and accepting than the United States has it to quite a large extent, really. Like DPR said, there's still a lot of pockets of fundamentalism and religiously motivated discrimination, that kind of thing. But it's almost like United States and, well, I mean, there's other countries. Africa is really campaigning in a lot of ways against homosexuality now, and they're really being persecuted on the African continent there. But we're seeing quite a few strides in acceptance and mainstream acceptance of homosexuals in our culture.
I think probably similar in Canada to this country, that homophobia is really now the preserve of extreme right-wing politicians and religion.
It seems to be looked down on by the majority, though. Now it's nice. Like the homophobia seems to be looked down on by the majority.
Well, I mean, if I remember correctly, in Africa, aren't they doing like witch hunts and stuff and killing homosexuals and stuff in Africa?
Yeah.
In some countries, yes.
Yeah, in some countries, sub-Saharan Africa, I believe, Uganda, they've got bills that were actually sponsored by and co-founded by American evangelical institutions that exported homophobia out of fundamentalism in the States into Uganda and influenced those bills directly. And those are they started by including execution for, they called it aggravated homosexuality, and it's been through international pressure downgraded to life in prison. But if you're convicted of being homosexual in Uganda, right now, I believe you're facing, if you're lucky, if the street mob doesn't get to you, you're facing life in prison.
And there are other countries, let's not forget, Pakistan being one, where attitudes towards homosexuals are still extremely, in my view, primitive. And there are occasions where lynch mobs do actually get hold of these people, and they will kill them.
Yes.
And there are certain Islamic countries where stoning to death is still the punishment for homosexuality. I struggle to conceive of that in the 21st century, that there are still places that will stone people to death by virtue of their sexuality. It is, in my view, utterly barbaric, and I cannot see any justification for it. And as I say, it seems to be the preserve, as I said, of the religious to hold such bigoted, homophobic views.
Especially the Abrahamic faiths, fundamentalist Christianity and fundamentalist Islam, it leads the push against it. Against homosexuality in that respect. I mean, and against a lot of things, but I guess that's the topic at hand. And quite violently in a lot of places where a fundamentalist majority rules the culture.
And I do think it is a shame, and I know that Sir Strife will probably mention this in due course, so that I'm aware that efforts were made to try and find someone or from the religious to come on the show and to explain why it is that they hold the views that they do. I know In particular, we sought to get Jason Burns on to. He's someone that has posted many videos explaining his views of homosexuality, which one can imagine, being a religious person, are not favourable. And he won't come on because, unfortunately, it isn't a proper academic debate. And despite the fact that he wouldn't have had to do any research, seeing as he's expressed these views before, given at least 24 hours notice, he declined the invitation, along with others. And just before we went live, we were discussing why it is that people feel comfortable in expressing these views in public arenas such as YouTube and blogs, but they won't actually come onto a live discussion to defend their position. And I suspect that it is because they know that their position is unjustifiable, save for reliance upon their particular holy book. And again, if I may just carry on this mini rant, it's odd, isn't it, that the same book that they rely on to hit on the gays also endorses slavery. Not one of them I'm aware of makes public pronouncements about slavery still being acceptable, but homosexuality is. I wonder why that is.
Yeah, I mean, they don't realize. You almost do. You're in the back of your mind. You do realize that as a fundamentalist, your beliefs cause you to come down on the unpleasant side, on the side of hating something or someone or a group of people. You're forced to defend the genocides of the Old Testament. You're forced to defend the laws in regards to rape and how a woman must marry her rapist, and how the Israelites in Canaan, when they slaughtered a city, were taking the virgin daughters and raping them as spoils of war. And you're forced to come out against a whole group in society, homosexuals, and say how wrong they are and how evil they are. And I mean, I always say to them, well, okay, so you say that this is bad, this is wrong. Well, then what do you propose to be done about it? I mean, seriously. But
the thing is, there's a slightly nuanced argument that they use. I think it is utterly disgusting, but they use it. They don't hate the sinner.
Oh,
they only hate the sin, and that makes it perfectly acceptable.
Just to note, I'm actually reading an article from one of those people, one of these evangelicals, these American Christian evangelicals that went to Uganda and stuff. They said he did not want the penalty to be death. He wanted the penalty to be what's the word? Oh man, what's the word? It's not death, but he wants rehabilitation. He wants. I'm guessing that would be.
No, that's the thing. They say that, and they try to put them in these programs that are supposed to make them straight again, and they're just abusive and hateful and horrible, and they torture people. It's awful.
Sorry,
they say that
to make them normal again. Did you say?
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's what
he
they
said.
say.
You mean like electroshock therapy, etc.?
Well, because they believe that God created us as heterosexuals to propagate the species, that there's a God that creates us to be a certain way, and they believe it's a perversion against nature. Yeah,
I know that. It just frustrates me. And let's face it, if they're correct, then those that indulge in acts of homosexuality are going to experience an eternity of damnation. Isn't that enough of a punishment without having to stone them to death and hasten that?
I mean, that's the weird thing.
Unfortunately, it's in the text. The text lays it out. It doesn't say, well, they're going to burn in hell anyway, so just never mind them. It says, turn your attention to them. God thinks it's an abomination, and purge that kind of thing from your land. I mean, the Old Testament, the Bible, is it's barbaric and horrible. I was saying to somebody today, you have to realize these were angry old fundamentalists. Religious people for thousands of years ago in the hot desert, being like, God hates just gay people. God fucking hates them. And they're writing it down in a book like, oh, fuck it. And so it gets written down, and then people take it, literally now, but it's just angry old fundamentalists thousands of years ago writing shit in a book. I mean,
unfortunately, it isn't. If it was just a part of antiquity, we'd look back on it and say, well, we were done then. But people are still doing it now. And I just want to revert very quickly, if I may, back to this issue of stoning people to death, because years ago when I was naive about this, I thought that the person would sort of like be put up against a wall, a little bit like Mary Magdalene was in the Bible, and people would throw stones, and I'd think, well, you know, you've got half a chance of dodging most of them and protecting yourself. Oh no, the current method of stoning someone to death is to tie them up, to bury them up to their shoulders, so the only thing sticking out of the ground is their head. And then people throw... there isn't any chance of dodging these things. It is the most despicable and disgusting treatment of another human being.
You know what that's... Oh, God.
I say this to people that hold up this literal interpretation of the Bible as if it's something great. So you look at it, but transplant those practices from then to today. Put them in our context. Put yourself right in the middle of that. You wouldn't partake of that because your morality right now is far superior. I mean, no, we wouldn't stand for that in our society. That it's disgusting. Could you even imagine that? And it happens in fundamentalists.
But my point is that, unfortunately, there are societies still extant today in which that is common practice.
Unbelievable, isn't it? It's just...
My honest question is, like, the whole thing, like, the whole stoning and such. I mean, being buried in your head in the sand, I thought they would just leave you. When you say that, like, you know, like, remember there was some kind of punishment where they just bury you in the sand and they leave you, right?
Yeah, no, that was like folkloric, like Native American, I think. But no, this was.
But no, as atheist rightly points out, their good book tells them that these people must be stoned, and therefore, you know, they appeal to this higher authority and say, well, don't blame me. It's what I obviously.
It says that if a man lies with a man, they've committed an abomination, they shall surely be put to death. I mean, Leviticus says it. It pronounces
quite clearly. It also talks about slavery, and it also talks about eating shellfish. Slavery and eating shellfish don't seem to be a problem to them anymore, but homosexuality still does. And I'm talking here about the Christian religions, because I'm not entirely sure what the Quran actually says about homosexuals. I imagine it's much the same. As I say, it's still in practice. Absolutely disgraceful.
Well, and I've said a number of times recently that you look at the doctrines that have been placed in the dustbin of history. I mean, Mark Twain said it very well, and he said the text prescribed death against witches, and he says for centuries we put witches to death. He says until we found out that there was no such thing as witches, and we stopped. He says the text is the same. The text still says to put them to death, but we changed. And the same thing for slavery. Slavery in the United States especially was justified through the Bible. The Bible says slavery is okay in many different contexts, and especially in the context that they were doing it. But we changed. Our morality changed. The text remains the same. Our morality changes. The same thing has to happen with homosexuality. Our morality has to change. The text will remain the same, but we'll overlook it. The same thing, same way we do with witch burning. Witch burning happened in North America, in the United States, hundreds of years ago. I mean, slavery happened.
Not even 100 years ago. The Salem witch trials were about less than 100 years ago, I think.
No, they were more. They were before. I know they were before the United States was a country.
Yeah, a couple hundred years ago.
I apologize. Then I was.
I think it was the 1600s.
Mid 1600s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sure the text says it, but it's a text that needs to be left behind. Like slavery, like witch burning, these prescriptions of death against homosexuals needs to be thrown into the dustbin of history alongside these other horrible things.
Well, I mean, the thing is, though, from what I can tell, like the whole culture of Europe, pretty much in all countries in Europe, like Britain and America and such, they all got their culture from, in a sense, the Bible. Their practices and methods of slavery and...
Well, it's heavily influenced. It's a Christian influence, yes.
Well, yes.
Yeah, but and it's just the reason that it was easier to give women the vote and say women are the same as men, to free the slaves. It was easier to stop burning witches because you come into contact, even as a fundamentalist, with women all the time, with people of other color or skin. And you're faced with this all the time, but a fundamentalist insulates themselves into these little tiny groups, and they don't very often come into contact with homosexuals, and it's an easy thing to stand up and rail against. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it's taking so long, is because they're so insulated.
They need a scapegoat, and
Yes.
they think at the moment that homosexuals are a safe scapegoat for them.
Yeah.
They need to be able to stand up and say society's terrible and this is why.
Exactly.
And
they did.
people in
Jerry
the
Falwell
audience,
did that. President of Liberty University. After 9/11, he said this happened because of abortion, because of homosexuality, and they got these boogeymans.
Kind of just like Alex Jones and that whole bombing of the Boston Marathon. He's like, the government did it. The government did it. Yet.
Well, no, this is more insidious, like in the Old Testament, where the King David numbers the people. He has a census. He numbers the people. God gets angry, and what does he do? God doesn't punish David. God kills some upwards to 70,000 innocent people to teach the king a lesson. And this is what fundamentalists are afraid of. This is what Jerry Falwell and those fundamentalists said in the States after 9/11. Says God's getting angry, and we're going to get caught in the crossfire because of these homosexuals. And they're angry. They're upset. They're afraid that angry God from the sky is going to rain down his wrath, and and their families and good people are going to get caught in the crossfire because that God kills people indiscriminately. And in the Bible, that's what it says.
Yeah, but the trouble is, these people who are saying that, if they truly believed in the God of the Bible, they'd know that they were going to be the first up against the wall.
Yeah. Well, it's strangely paradoxical in that way. It's like they're way too overly concerned. I think I saw a poll a little while ago that said that believers in an afterlife are more scared of death than atheists are on the whole. And it's weird. And because, I mean, I've been in prayer meetings all my life where, I mean, on the top of the list is, my 110-year-old grandfather is, in the hospital. Please pray that he gets better, And it's like, why? What are you doing? That he lives forever? I mean, they pretend to believe in eternity and in heaven and things like this, but in practice, they're more afraid of dying than the rest of us. It's really weird.
Also, welcome Realistic Nihilist to the show. Hello, Realistic.
Hey, I was just thinking about I was kind of listening in on you guys while I was doing other stuff, and it's interesting that you're talking about the witch trials in Salem, and that's so specific, and it's so funny because I was actually in Boston a couple of years ago, and I was checking out. I went to the Salem Witch Museum, and I don't remember exactly what a lot of the stuff was, but I just remember it being so silly, like some of the judgments made, and how they made them. It was like, and it wasn't even anything supernatural or anything like, that Monty Python thing. What else floats in water, right?
Yeah.
That a duck, right? So if a witch weighs as much as a duck, she's a witch. Burn her, or something weird like that.
If she floats, she's a witch. If she sinks, she's innocent.
Right. Yeah. It's exactly something like that.
Either way, she dies.
The whole rules and everything about them are so silly and so arbitrary. It's so I don't know, and it just, like you're quoting Mark Twain and how our morality is going to change. It's just going to change. Like it has to eventually, because you can't hold on to these antiquated ideals forever.
Yeah. You look at the bigotry, you look at this homophobia, it's exactly the same as the bigotry against witches. There's this boogeyman that they hold up, and they say they talk about homosexuals like they're evil and horrible and wicked and perverted and stuff, and they're not. They're just regular people living regular lives, but they hold them up as boogeymen, like they did with witches. It's the exact same prejudice, given voice and given permission and free reign through religious fundamentalism.
I think it's people like to have a scapegoat, and in barbaric times they would scapegoat people with barbarity, but nowadays I think they sort of, if homosexuals are actually stoned, I think these people who are shouting for it, a lot of them might calm down because our society has moved on. I don't think there would be some the burnings.
Though there is a huge element in fundamentalism.
Short of that, there'll be a few extremists, but I think because they know, it's basically bluster. That's why they get away with it, I think.
But the moderates go along with it. The moderates make it possible for the extremists to stand out there, because the moderates aren't going to say, hey, wait a minute, I know the Bible says that they deserve death, but I'm not so sure about that. Quite often they just remain silent because they're uneasy, especially with the issue of homosexuality. And they they stand, even the moderates in Christian fundamentalism are just, they give permission to the extreme views by their silence. And then the extremists, I mean, I've got a playlist on my channel. I started collecting videos of Christian preachers and fundamentalists saying that homosexuals deserve death. I mean, saying it in America. I mean, I just got tired of it. I got depressed of trying, looking for these things, because there's a lot of them, and it's awful. And I mean, there's a huge swath of churches out there with preachers standing in the pulpit saying, the government should be killing homosexuals. It's just, it's unfathomable, but it's happening in the Western world.
I mean, I just don't understand, though, like, they actually were able to pass this bill in Uganda, which I'm reading, and it was because of the work of 3 American evangelical Christians that pushed for it.
Yeah, and some of those organizations, those Christian organizations, were linked. Chick-fil-A was actually donating to these organizations who were funding these anti-homosexual bills in Uganda. I mean, this goes, and then they got all these Christians. Remember those Chick-fil-A days? They were lining up down the street supporting Chick-fil-A's stand against homosexuality, and Chick-fil-A was supporting American evangelicals who were supporting the life imprisonment and perhaps execution of homosexuals in Africa. I mean, this is what I say, that the moderates push this forward, and the fringes, it actually happens.
Well, I mean, funny thing is, like, the American Family Association, this branch of this thing called the Abiding Truth Ministry, with this guy named Scott Lively, one of the American evangelicals, is considered a hate group because of their actions and stuff, which is really messed up, because, I mean, yeah.
A lot of them actually they make statements and say that the Bible says that pronounces death upon them, and, well, I guess I support the Bible. They make statements like that. It's unbelievable, and it's depressing to me to have been a part of that for so long.
It's just interesting. It's mostly interesting to me how you changed, like how you came out of it. I don't even know how you would convert from that mind state, because really, it's like converting to any other mind state. How can you just start to think some sort of contradictory idea? How can you start to agree with some contradictory idea to what you actually believe? How does that come about?
Well, my deconversion was all-encompassing. I mean, it started with doubts about my faith. When I started re-examining my beliefs and finding, flaws and contradictions in my belief, I stepped back and started looking outside of it, started looking at science, started looking at scientific answers. Actually, one of the funny things, homophobia was one of the last things for me to deal with. I remember, being an atheist and still having that knee-jerk, homosexual reaction. But that was ingrained and given permission through this religious fundamentalism I was a part of for so long. And I remember thinking, why do I do that? And stepping back and examining that. And one of the last things in my, psyche, in my belief system or worldview, whatever, to examine was, why do I feel that way? And looking at homosexuality, looking at the facts. There's a lot of scientific facts in regards to species, in regards to genetics, in regards to, emotional and mental, predispositions, and then coming and seeing the facts and looking at people just living their lives, and they are this way, and realizing that I was wrong. It was just looking at the facts, being open-minded, and being willing to be wrong, willing to change my mind. And I mean, the facts speak for themselves.
If I may, how did you justify or marry up this idea, which I think is sort of like pretty much ingrained in you as a Christian, that you must do unto others as you would like have done to yourself? How did you marry that up with the idea of hating faggots?
Well, it's really weird. There's such a level of cognitive dissonance. The more fundamentalist you are, the farther you go into it. I mean, the most fundamentalist people are the ones that can handle the highest levels of cognitive dissonance. Because you're right, to hold in one hand the belief that you should treat everyone with love and love your neighbor as yourself and treat everybody as you would have to be treated, and on the other hand be like, I hate faggots, I hope they all die. Seriously, how the hell does one person hold both of those? You're fragmented. Your mind is fragmented because, well, the scriptures say both.
Well, I mean,
And
that,
that's
like, love
the
your
thing.
neighbor, and what happens if your neighbor's a homosexual? What do you do?
The thing is, the scriptures say both, and you try to reconcile it. The scriptures say love your neighbor. It also says, homosexuality is an abomination. They're disgusting. They're perverted. They deserve to die and go to hell and burn forever. And so, on one hand, you're like, well, that's where this love the sinner, hate the sin idea comes from, because this is how they try to balance the cognitive dissonance. They say, well, it's not really the person I hate, it's just the act, because they think that it's a choice, and you think that it's a choice. You're choosing to be homosexual, you're choosing to act on it, and so I hate that choice, I hate that sin, but you as a person, I wish you would get saved and go to heaven. And what you don't realize is that, it's like saying, I don't hate you, I just hate the fact that you have brown eyes, and that, I hate everything about you. I hate everything you were born to be.
But Jesus loves you, right?
Right.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I love you and Jesus loves you, but I just hate everything about you. It's ridiculous.
One of the most pertinent questions that I would always want to ask these people, because really I can't think of anything else of, besides a physical body, which they don't believe is you in a sense. Besides your physical body, what is a person besides the culmination of their decisions?
Well,
it's vitalism. You believe that inside the body and control of the body
I know.
is a soul.
But that soul is making the decisions. If you want to divorce it from a physical reality, then you want to say that your soul is making the decision. Your soul feels this. Your soul wants to make these decisions. So you're not saying, "Oh, I don't hate you." Well, but then you have to make the subdivision between a physical body and a mind, and you have to say, "I love the physical body, you." Because how can you argue that that's not what your soul actually wants? You're not actually doing what you essentially want to do.
This goes back to the idea of homosexuality being a choice. Now, tell me, anyone here or watching this, tell me, when did you wake up one morning and say, now, what shall I be today? Shall I be hetero, shall I be homo, or shall I be bisexual? In what way is it a choice? And if it is a choice, then presumably all those that are bashing on the gays must have contemplated being gay themselves and thought,
wait. Perfect example, Ted Haggard.
Well, I actually have it because I can't view anything from any personal experience. But to me, in my estimation, it was a choice, and that's because I could have leaned a certain way and chose to lean a different way. I chose to lean heterosexually. That might have been because of my own mental stasis at the time, but there was, growing up through childhood, there was a distinct separation, like a distinct fork in the road where I could have gone either way, and it didn't really matter.
That's one thing people don't understand very well, is that sexuality is a spectrum. I mean, gender is a spectrum, physically and mentally and emotionally. I mean, there's not just this black and white, you're either or. I mean, for a lot of people in their experience, I mean, for me, it was never a choice. I was heterosexual and always have been, and never even considered any other way. But for a lot of people, there is a gradient. For some people, they're never considered not being gay. They just were. They always were attracted to the same sex. I mean, there's a huge spectrum in the human experience.
But yeah, but it comes down. It's funny. I saw this point. On it was like a protest sign or something. It said, so what if being gay is a choice? He said, some people choose to be assholes and they can get married.
Yeah.
And that's, it's really,
I suppose, and I'm trying to play devil's advocate here to a degree, I suppose the religious will say, okay, you didn't have a choice about your sexuality, but you've got a choice as to whether you express your sexuality.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah,
they say, okay, people are born as pedophiles.
What is the consequence of that? What is the consequence of that, of course, is it means that God has got a twisted sense of humour. Yes, I'll make you in my image, but I'm not gay. But I'm going to make you gay and then tell you that you can't express your sexuality, your natural tendencies, because if you do, you're sinning and I'm going to burn you motherfucking ass in hell forever. This is a twisted God.
Yes. Yeah, but the fundamentalist doesn't think too far into the practical applications. They don't take historical or scientific evidence. I mean, what really matters to the fundamentalist is the text. It matters what's written down, and everything else. And you've heard it said, people, creationists, Ken Ham, these people. If you have the Bible and you have science, and they disagree, it's obviously science that's wrong. This is how the fundamentalists views everything. I mean, the text is paramount. If the text says this, but our experience says otherwise, our emotions say otherwise, our science says otherwise, or everything else is against it, it doesn't matter, then everything else is wrong, and that's how the fundamentalist views the world.
Could I ask you a question, if I may? Obviously, you have, I would say, not ironically, the privilege of having the upbringing that you had to be able to experience what fundamentalists go through. What would be your solution to bringing a more tolerant attitude to the fundamentalist? Is it indeed possible?
I think it's a really hard question. It's the most important one where fundamentalism is concerned, and it's also the most difficult, because you can't make a fundamentalist see anything. There's these blinders that you present them even something very clear, some genetic evidence. It's written in our code and our DNA, and no, they won't see it. Not just like I said, if it goes against the text, then they just don't see it. I think you have to appeal to a sense of logic that's in a person. It has to be a personal decision whether you change, but you have to appeal to a sense of decency, a sense of logic. I mean, a morality, because most of the time, a fundamentalist personal morality is much better than the one put forward in the text, and you can point that out, and that's a difficult one for them to grasp. I said recently to someone that your God would burn me in hell forever, but you wouldn't. Even though I'm an unbeliever, even though I refuse to accept those things as true, your God that you propose to exist would burn me forever, but you wouldn't, because your morality is superior to your God's. That makes them extremely uncomfortable. But I mean, even with something so obvious, it's almost impossible to reach them. And I think it's something that a person has to be willing themselves to see, to change, to value facts and evidence. I mean, I think it was Sam Harris who says, what kind of evidence can you present someone to convince them of the value of evidence? What kind of logic can you provide to somebody? Can you put forward to somebody to show them the value of logic?
There's another expression that I like to use. If you could reason with the religious, there wouldn't be religion.
Yeah, that's that famous House quote. Hitchens used to also say, you can't reason somebody out of a position that they haven't been reasoned into.
I don't think that's true, actually. I know there's one that A.C. Grayling uses himself in his speeches, and I had a discussion with Matt Dillahunty about this, because he listened to the same speech in Austin only a month or so ago. He took issue with A.C. Grayling over that, and I think I do as well. I do not believe that to be the case.
Well, no, I don't think it's an absolute
difficult.
At all.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it's as you say, it's certainly not an absolute.
There's a point I want to bring up, and it kind of, I guess it has to do with fundamentalism, not fundamentalism as far as Christianity is concerned, but sort of kind of like a Platonistic worldview. Because I had this Platonistic idea. I used to have this Platonistic idea of objective morality, and I didn't address it as such because I was thinking a lot more philosophically before I actually knew the philosophical arguments and implications and discussions that had been had for centuries beforehand. But I was a Platonist in a sense that I believed in this objective morality and what is objectively right and what is objectively wrong and stuff. And I considered homosexuality wrong. I didn't care if they were homosexual, but I considered it wrong. I had this point where I couldn't conceive of anything else being right, and I thought that's how I made the decision that I made to not be homosexual. because I couldn't understand it as a right decision, and I used to hold to this view, and I mean, if I could go back in time and talk about, like listen to myself talking about what was right and what was wrong, I'd punch myself in the fucking head for being so damn wrong, But the thing that changed for me is really just thinking about what is moral and what is not moral, and the fact that I couldn't put any concrete idea on it. I couldn't get it absolutely right. That's what changed me. My fundamentalism was married to this idea of objective morality, and until I became a moral nihilist, that was when I decided that there is nothing wrong with homosexuality, just like there's nothing wrong with anything, and that has a lot of really horrifying implications. It does, but that's what broke me.
I'm not sure you meant what you just said when you said you didn't think that anything was wrong. I think there are certain things that are wrong, and while sticking on the subject of sex, I would say that paedophilia is definitely wrong. I don't see homosexuality as being wrong. Now, if you asked me to explain why, I would probably rely on issues such as consent and informed decision and such like. But I agree with you in one regard, that there is no such thing as an objective morality per se. But there are certain things that I think I would say are definitely morally wrong.
Oh yeah, and so would I, and so would everyone else. You can't hold any sort of position without having ideals. I mean, you couldn't live if you didn't have ideals, if you didn't have priorities. But the point is saying that anyone's specific priorities is more valued, and you already agreed with me on that point. There are no priorities that essentially ought to be valued. There are just priorities that people do typically value, and I would agree with you in saying that pedophilia is wrong, but that's a harder one. I mean, as far as sexuality is concerned, there are more obvious ones, like rape, and where that is concerned, the age of consenting is debacle, because there are situations in which there are other countries in which the legal marital age is 14, and someone was telling me about the Vatican, it's even younger, so
It's like 10 or 12 or something.
Yeah, but seeing as there are no women in the Vatican, heterosexual sex in the Vatican ain't going to happen, is it? But no, I think so far as age of consent is concerned. Sorry, do go on.
Just to note, we have our first caller, Neil.
Oh, goody.
Give me 5 seconds to get him in.
Yeah, whilst you're doing that,
Okay.
I agree that in regard to age of consent, it is somewhat arbitrary. But
Hello there.
in a democracy, I don't see how else it can be, how else it could be. And I don't have a great issue with the age of consent. I think there are definitely some people who probably are in a position to consent at a younger age. I suspect there's more, an equal amount maybe, who are older than 16 and perhaps shouldn't or not able to give
Those are
consent.
things that
realistic principles.
things that
one at a time. But can I just to let's welcome Neil Neil onto the show.
Hey, thanks.
Hello.
So what was the point you wanted to bring up?
Well, I'm listening here, and I'm typing here on the side, and I just wanted to bring up one thing, and the fact that everything, like you said earlier, it's a spectrum, and I think that to a large degree, some of the things that we're talking about here are subjective. First case in point, you can look, and there's been several revisions of the Bible, and the fourth gospel, according to John, written by the Greeks, mentions, the apostle lying on top of Jesus, and et cetera, and about love, and it's very suggestible towards a homosexual theme. And then you end up with subsequent copies, omitting such things entirely. We have in our society where we accept things like the witch hunt in the 1600s, and now that sort of thing is an abomination. So that's subjective. We've got morality. Morality is whatever the common people consider to be moral. Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, historically, with these issues of morality, especially sexual morality, have been clouded by the idea of sin in a religious context, and sin is something that God doesn't like. Instead of what we're doing, and we're talking about age of consent, these are things that we're deciding secularly. We're coming up with a secular morality based upon the good of the average person, the best. The best perceived good that we can come up with for everybody. I mean, and the idea
Absolutely,
of
I totally agree with
suffering.
that.
And so we're tossing aside this idea of sin in the context of the government, in the context of law, and we're formulating a better morality based upon empathy, based upon consideration for others.
Yeah,
And
I did a
that's the
genealogy
part-
study, and 3 generations going back, I had a great-grandfather that married a 12-year-old.
Mhm.
And this was accepted, you know? Like
Well, I
in the
mean,
20s.
especially in the context of like they didn't live as long and they had different values. But we have come, I think, in our society, come to realize that, I mean, it's nice to give a child a childhood, and I mean, you only get a few years at the beginning of your life to be unburdened by sexuality, and it's good to protect them from adults who would pull them into something before they're ready. And so, I mean, while it's a nebulous concept, it's I think it's a valuable construct to have set up in our societies to protect children.
Oh, absolutely. Same thing with polygamy, right? Like, you take the modern example of Bountiful, and, I mean, okay, some people have...
Neil, can you turn off your the video feed? Because I hear the echo.
Oh, okay, because I hit mute.
Must be someone else.
Interesting.
But DPR has a question for you.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't entirely clear when you were saying that, talking about subjective morals. It seemed as if you were leaving open the idea that there could be such a thing as an objective moral or an objective moral value. Is that what you're saying?
Not totally, but I see where you're going with that, and
Well, no,
I think
I'm not going anywhere.
I think
I'm
that
just
different
asking you what you think.
Well, different subjects are more easily defined as moral and not moral. We can easily say that it's not okay to kill. That's an easily
Not
defined...
very. This
That's
is a
we can't
discussion I
find
get.
morality, right?
We can't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We can't say that because there are situations, and this is the difference between killing and murder. There are
Okay,
certain
but
situations where
it's
killing
easier to
is
say
a
that
positively
than say
good
something
thing to
more
do.
graceful.
And what the difference is what society is prepared to accept. Now, I'll give you one example. A suicide bomber is just about to pull the plug on his bomb whilst on an aeroplane. You're sat next to him, and you use force, which ends up killing him. No one is going to convict you of murder in those circumstances. So, you know, even with an issue such that you said was plain like that, unfortunately, plain, not an aeroplane, but plain and simple like that, is not, unfortunately. I think there are very interesting issues about when it is appropriate or acceptable to kill someone. I think, for example, another one is old age, when you become so infirm that you want to die, but you're not able to kill yourself because of your infirmity. Then I think it's perfectly acceptable under certain situations for someone to assist you in suicide. So I think it's a really complicated issue.
Yeah,
So,
religious people are always saying... Go ahead.
I'll just finish very quickly. My point is that as far as I'm concerned, there is no such thing as, there are no objective morals, and there is no such thing as an objective moral value.
Well, I say this to religious people, and they try to point out, okay, they say there are objective morals. There's an objective morality, or right and wrong. I say, point to one. Show me one, because even point to one in the Bible. You know, thou shalt not kill. And then we'll go to all the passages about killing, about not just killing men and women and children and babies, like running babies through with swords at the direct command of God. I mean, seriously, there is no biblical objective
morality. What I find interesting as well is that when those tablets were being chiseled out, either by God or through Moses, and he comes to thou shalt not kill, which out of the 10 comes down, I think, is it 6? It's quite low down the list. But what's interesting is only a few chapters before, Moses has been in Egypt and kills a slave owner. Now, I wonder, Moses is there sort of like chipping him out, thou shalt not kill. And he goes, fuck, God, there's something I need to tell you.
You know what another funny
It
thing
makes
is?
me
If you
think
go with thou shalt not murder, didn't Abel kill Cain, or was it Cain kill Abel?
No, that was the first murder in the Bible, and that was not in a good context.
Yeah, but you hadn't brought out the rules yet, so that was okay.
But this is an interesting thing. You talk about the evolution of the Bible. If you look at the King James version of the Bible, in the Ten Commandments, it will say thou shalt not kill. If you look at the New International Version, it will say thou shalt not murder.
There are
So-
different underlying manuscripts to
thing
each
I
and
want-
a different... Yeah, go ahead.
The thing I want to bring up, and the thing I always try to bring up to anybody who thinks that it's the same. What do they call that? The Euthyphro dilemma. That is God is immoral because God commands it, or is I don't remember how that dilemma goes. Is it moral?
Is it good because God says so, or is God saying merely what is good?
Right. And the thing about that objective, I can't stand the rebuttals to the Euthyphro dilemma because they're also silly to me. The whole I don't remember what is William Lane Craig's rebuttal.
He pretty much, I think if I remember correctly, Craig's rebuttal is God is good. I mean, that's what Aquinas did, right? Pretty much said.
Yeah, I know.
They say morality is a mirror of the goodness of God. It's that we're made in His image, which means we're made moral beings.
Right.
God is, in William Lane Craig's view, God is the personification of goodness. Everything that God does is good. And this is why he ends up in very deeply embarrassing positions of having to justify some of the slaughters that were conducted in the Old Testament at God's command. For example, the slaughtering of the Canaanites. And when you actually watch him try and explain this, you can see him almost physically wheezing at having to try and justify this absurdity.
Yes. That's what I was saying. It puts you in those positions. It makes you defend the most horrible things, and it just eats you up inside to have to be that. It makes you. I mean, seriously, you imagine having to take the position of defending why it was a good thing for an army to slaughter thousands of children.
Yeah. Well, again, we can blanket say it was subjective, right? So for some reason, the amount of good outweighed the amount of evil done in the action and was
But
justified.
you can never establish it, though. Even believers, they can never establish it.
The problem.
But I'm just saying that back then, obviously,
the problem I have with the Euthyphro dilemma is it doesn't answer the question. That it comes back to it and it doesn't answer the question because you're saying, oh, God is just good, so whatever God does is good, and it's good because God commanded it. At the same time, it's just good, so God has to obey it because God has to be God, right? It's that ponderance of the law of identity. But the thing about it is, anytime the best thing to bring up is the fact that what is God? God is just this giant, powerful dictator, and I don't know if anybody just they think that, okay, I'm going to follow the views of the dictator, and therefore that's what's going to be right.
But see, you're not really following the views of the dictator. You're following the views that were dictated by other people.
Yeah, other people, yeah. And also, what people say, when people say, but this is just what the Bible says, what they're really saying is, because everybody has a different interpretation, they're putting forward their interpretation. They're saying that this is what my interpretation of the Scripture says, and this is the absolute truth. They're putting themselves up as the one to interpret it, because, I mean, they're setting themselves apart from everybody else who has a different opinion on the matter.
Yeah.
I think Craig's argument, his two arguments, is one is that God made you so he can squash you whenever you want. Therefore, it's not good or bad as far as God's concerned because he made you, so he's got the right to remove you. And his other argument, like on the slaughter of the Canaanites or the Ammonites or the whatever Knights, was that it wasn't really a slaughter because they were told to leave, and it was only the ones that didn't leave. Which, I mean, that's always begged the question to me. Abraham supposedly was living in Ur, down in southern Mesopotamia. And so why didn't God just say to him, this is going to be Israel. You've got this lovely desert and I'll make it fertile for you. No, what I'll do is I'll send you on about 2,000 mile trek up the Tigris and Euphrates, and you'll then have to battle your way through. It's like some, multiplayer, massive online role-playing game, isn't it? You're going to go in there and you've got to destroy everybody, all the other tribes around, slaughter them all, and then you can have the place. Forget where you lived.
My only
It's
consolation
absurd.
with that is that it apparently, none of it actually happened. The Abraham and Moses and the wandering in the wilderness and the slaughter of the Canaanites, apparently Israeli archaeology has established that actually none of that happened. So that's a that's a good thing.
Yeah,
I would
there's
say
there's a very important thing. Oh, sorry. I just say that while I remember that if you look up the Armana letters, ARMANA, and they were found. I can't remember when they were found, but they're a very comprehensive set of letters, clay tablets, and they're mainly concerned with, I think, a king in Babylon at the time pleading with the pharaoh in Egypt because he's under siege from all these different people, and he's under siege from here and there. So it's talking about the whole politics in the Middle East. And at one time, does some mercenaries who may have been the Hebrews were mentioned in the letters. But the key thing is these Armana letters are all written around the time when Moses was meant to have been dragging 2 million Hebrews out of Egypt.
Yeah.
And there's no mention of them anywhere in there.
Yeah, and no archaeological evidence of the wandering in the wilderness
I mean, my
across
opinion-
the Red Sea or the slavery in Egypt, none of
But
that.
let's face it, after 2,000 years, how much evidence is there going to be of people
Well,
that
there'd be some. That was
wandered around?
I mean, there was
They're saying
evidence-
that they built the pyramids, for crying out loud, and I mean this is like millions of people wandering through the wilderness. And what actually there is opposing evidence of Jewish settlements arising inside the land, and these people coming up as just one of the people groups in that area, and not coming in from Egypt or somewhere else. It'd be the evidence actually is opposite to what the text claims.
I wouldn't be amazed if they made the story to make it so that I guess they're like, hey, we did all this cool shit and you guys did no cool shit, so we're awesome.
Well, no, exactly.
Have you guys followed the recent archaeology of the Clovis man? Like the first people to come to the American continent?
I know a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, recently they thought that, everything went back and was younger than 13,000 years old. And their postulation was there were no people in South America or North America before this point. And they all migrated on the land bridge that separated Alaska from Kamchatka. Well, they've recently been proven wrong at a couple of different points. The first one being that there were indigenous people in South America before 13,000 years. And the second...
Or is this the Mexican footprints?
And the second being that the actual Clovis men, the actual Americans, were also here sooner. They've discovered their camps recently. Midwestern United States, Eastern Canada, close down, I think close to Mexico anyways. But anyways, the whole thing about it is that when you're trying to do archaeology and you're trying to study a people that don't leave behind things that last that long, then you might have an incomplete picture of reality, right? And so, it could be that the Jews never wandered around for 40 years. But
Well, no, it's the fact that they didn't, because
on the other side
not-
of the coin, they might have.
No, but
Well,
the thing
they
is though,
didn't,
the Jews, the claim that the Jews made the pyramids, which I'm not sure if it's just a cultural thing now, because, I mean, we have evidence of how the Egyptians made the pyramids. We have, I think temples that show how they did it and stuff. And
Well, the Egyptians used slave labor. We know that.
not as much as you think.
We know that
Not as
because
much as
No,
you
we
think.
don't.
we
Not-
know
we
that
don't.
because they have the actual
Not as much as you
ledger
think. though.
reports of the supplies that they had to feed all the workers, and
Workers,
how they were
right.
doling out the beer was different between the Freemasons, the people that were free that were working,
I did not bring
and
up
the
Freemasons.
actual slaves that they had got a lesser share.
I
So
didn't.
the Egyptians did use slaves.
Well, I mean,
Were those
where
slaves Jewish, though? We don't know.
Where this subject is concerned, I mean, the only evidence, the only thing supporting the fact, or supporting the case for the Jews or the Hebrews wandering in the wilderness, coming to Canaan, slaughtering Canaanites, the only evidence there is that in the biblical texts. While the physical evidence on the ground, the archaeological evidence that we have, seems to contradict it, seems to go against the text. And since we've established quite a lot that the text got wrong in the first place, quite a lot of other things, then it seems to me a rational thing to assume that I'll go with the evidence on the ground instead of the claims of the text.
The point is, if you the text is simply absurd, because if you start at the flood and then just start working on a population building up from the flood, and also the flood would have had the first pyramids, I think, would have been built within 200 years of the flood, and they were built out of limestone. So somehow this limestone was laid down by the flood, then turned into rock, all in 200 years, so it could be hewn into blocks to build pyramids with.
Yeah, it's impossible. I mean, the flood, the Tower of Babel, these things, they're prerequisites to the story, and those things are obviously false. I mean, all the evidence shows us. I mean, the evolution of language and the evolution of biological species both disprove both of those stories.
Well, the best fictional stories ring with grains of truth, right? This is something that's all throughout literary history. So probably there's something in there. Like, I mean, we can take the breakdown of the Bosphorus and the flood of the Black Sea. Might have been the Great Flood. I mean, if you were a person living on the seafloor of the Black Sea and you saw a big flood, I mean, for as far as the eye can see, everything's underwater.
Yes.
That's your world.
Yes, yes, but they say, well, like tallest mountain and stuff, I think it was like saying that kind of makes no sense, since I think it was the Epic of Gilgamesh, the same flood that the Israelis mentioned. The problem is the Israelis really embezzled the story, really embezzled it.
Embellished. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the flood, I think, can just be dismissed as a creation story that's thrown in there. Abraham, maybe Abraham as some legendary figure who was within the Canaanites or whatever and broke away. Maybe Moses had some basis either in Egypt or somewhere, where he led a slave rebellion, but he never took 2 million people or whatever marching through the desert for 40 years in the same pair of sandals.
The question is the question is, how do you feed them stuff? Like, I doubt that would even happen.
Well, no, God fed them from heaven, remember?
Well, the place wasn't such a desert 2,000 years ago. It wasn't a desert there.
It was pretty much a desert. I think you're thinking of Egypt. 6,000.
2,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago.
It was. Egypt was more tropical, but that's different. That's even older.
You've got legendary stories, and they've been built into the text, and that's fine. But the fundamentalists can't accept that. The thing is, and what the fundamentalists have right, of course, is the Jesus squad, the ones who focus on the New Testament. The New Testament is completely meaningless without the Old Testament.
Yeah, because you've got Jesus, in the literal interpretation, yes.
Well, no, anything at all, because Jesus comes to rid us of our sin, which came from the Garden of Eden, which didn't exist. And also Jesus, exactly. I mean, if you take all the Jesus quotes, they'll fit on a couple of sides of A4. And yet, time and time again, he harps back to the Old Testament. Did you not read where it was written? Did you not? And he backs up, he's basically backing up the myth as if it was fact.
Yeah. So and that's why when I have conversations with fundamentalists about evolution, about the obvious mythology of the story of creation and the flood and the Tower of Babel, what they always come down to is, well, then if you don't, then God doesn't exist, then Jesus wasn't real, then none of it's true, because you're right, it's all linked and it's all interconnected.
Exactly. And that's why they have to hang on, and they lie through their teeth to hang on to it.
Yes, they're emotionally invested. They can't not. Just they have to. I mean, I think they need to live forever. And
everybody needs to take a step back and a breath. And it's just like the witch hunt. We need to do away with the witch hunt. We need to be more acceptant of things that are happening out there, and at the same time hold a reverence for life. You know, like,
Well, when you have a worldview that says that this life is only a temporary inconvenience before your eternal life begins, before real life, I mean, it
then it
taints
takes away that
everything.
reverence, doesn't it? Yes.
It does. It takes away the wonder at the natural world. It takes away the appreciation for art and experience. I mean, you're just miserably waiting for this horrible existence to come to an end so you can fly off to heaven.
We got a theist caller.
Awesome.
I don't think any of you know him, but let me invite him.
Sure. Have him introduce himself. And
Yeah, well, give him a sec. He's on his iPad, from what I heard, so
all right.
if he answered.
I mean, the whole thing is the scripture is written by people. People are imperfect. God is perfect. People are imperfect. Now, when people try to describe him, they are not going to succeed 100% because they are not perfect.
But see, the scriptures say, the Bible says all scripture was given by inspiration of God. So yes, while it was written by people, God was in charge of what words were put down on the page. So in a sense, it's God-breathed. It's the word of God. Therefore, it's true.
Well, again, I think it's taken too literally, and metaphorically it might hold more credence. And like I say, with the grain of truth, right? We talk about the flood, and well, maybe this did happen, you know?
Locally.
Brandon, you want to introduce yourself? Oh, sorry.
Just one more point. If you look at the story of Adam and Eve, if you take that as a mythological story, a story with moral lessons, a story about the loss of innocence, a story about the gaining of knowledge, a story about all kinds of things, it's incredibly valuable and insightful in a lot of ways where that's concerned. But you lose that. When you try to take it literally, you lose all the value of the story.
Brandon, you want to introduce yourself? Brandon? Hello?
Maybe Brandon stepped away for a moment, or maybe he doesn't have voice.
Said busy. So give him 5 seconds.
Okay. Well, let him catch up to it then.
Yeah, if he comes
Anyways,
on, just break in.
I completely agree. If you can take it more metaphorically, you can come away with a lot more value, and you see how these morals are timeless. I mean, something 2,000 years ago is relevant now.
Yeah, but you say that, but then is there and there are some, you know, if we could just treat it as stories, there's some fun, well, or not so fun stories in the Old Testament, but is there anything actually new in there? Are there any new philosophical?
I think it's not so much about new. I think it's about, firsts. It's how they came up with these kind of metaphors and these kind of lessons very early on in our species, and how it has an insight into kind of, who we are and who we've been and what things we have valued, and lessons. I guess we can contrast our society and our morals today with those then, and we can learn lessons. And in that
exactly,
sense,
we're having so much trouble defining our morals, but that really some introspection of our commonality. Of our commonalities through faith, and not just through Christianity, but through Christianity, through Islam, through, if you take a look at what's good inside those, they're all teaching.
But you'll only find that
for life.
You'll only find that separate from a fundamentalist literal interpretation. When you start accepting mythology in the text, when you start accepting general lessons instead of, the angry being in the sky has said these things and we must take it literally. If you can overlook the fundamentalist literal interpretation, you can start gleaning valuable lessons for life today.
Yeah, I wish more people would.
Yeah, well, I think eventually we're heading that way because obviously, these things aren't literally true, and I think we're uncovering more and more about the natural world, and we're progressing in our societies where secular morality is concerned. These things are eclipsing these literal religious interpretations, and eventually, hopefully humanity can overcome it. Fundamentalist Islam is one thing. They need to have a moderating influence in them like Christianity has had in the last few centuries, but
again, it's all about their interpretation, right? You look at the original text and you talk to anybody who's a moderate Muslim, and they will tell you there's nowhere in there that it's justified that they commit these acts of murder in the name of jihad. Jihad is something that exists, but they're not, they're just interpreting it wrong, basically, is what it boils down to.
Yeah, and the moderateness.
Brandon, you back? Because we heard sound.
Yeah, hearing some sounds there, but maybe he's got his mic muted or something.
Mm.
That's all I was
I mean,
going to
on the question of morals and ethics and things, I mean, I think it would be much more fun for people to be taught the Iliad and the Odyssey. I mean, they're much better stories.
Well, I think they should be taught them too.
Yeah, and all the moral stories of that, and it's pure mythology, and all legend and mythology, and all the moral stories could be discussed in class amongst the kids, but they'd have great stories behind them.
Yeah.
You know,
well, the lessons there are very apparent. I mean, you take a look at the Iliad. If they wouldn't have let the prince take King Agamemnon's wife, I mean, the whole thing would never have happened. Troy would never have burned.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got the whole curse on the family coming all the way through, you know, and people being fed their own children. You know, you've got basically you've got the fates coming in there, and which is a form of karma. But you know, it's letting people know that, you know, your deeds will come back to haunt you, and I think it's a good way to get people thinking about their own morals and ethics.
Yeah, absolutely, and there are many other examples too out there.
I mean, if you want to pull one out of the Bible, if you actually told children the entire story of Lot from beginning to end, I don't know what morals they would get out of that.
That is one of the most twisted stories. Oh my God! It's one that's upheld in fundamentalist Christianity. It's weird.
What story?
The story of Lot. I mean, we're talking about, you know, God sending angels and men of the city wanting to rape them, and God burning the city with fire, and then Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt, and then Lot's and his daughter's living in a cave, and then his daughter's getting him drunk, and then he's having sex with him and getting pregnant. It's just...
Well, it actually starts off just before, where Abraham's Sarah is can't get pregnant. She's, you know, in her early 90s, and she can't get pregnant. So God pops down with two angels, and they have a meal under the tree, and God tells Sarah, "Don't worry, you'll get pregnant." And she's sort of laughing at him. Well, laughing. She wasn't laughing too loud, or her teeth would have fallen out. But anyway, so then the angels, apparently God gets the angels to do his dirty work, and they trot off to Sodom.
Well, they told Abraham that they were going to do it, and Abraham had the whole bargain.
And Abraham says, "Look, are you really going to kill them all?" And God says, "Yeah, there's no innocent there." So Abraham said, "What if there's 100? What if there's 50? What if there's 10 good men? Just good men. Don't worry about the babies or the animals or the women, or, you know, it's just the men. If the men aren't good, then everybody has to die." And it's not just Sodom and Gomorrah. It's about a dozen towns that are going to get wiped out. So they go down there, and the angels go in, and the people in Sodom think, "Oh, we want the bit of these angels. We want to bugger them to death." And but Lot's a good host, because he's one of the perfect people that God's going to save.
Oh yeah,
so Lot says, "No, forget the angels. I've got 2 virgin daughters. If I send them out, you can rape them to death.
Just throw them to the mob
alone." But the angels blind the mob, and so Lot and who's good, although he was going to give his 2 daughters up to be raped to death. His 2 daughters, I mean, they're not young because they are a marriageable age, and his wife. So these are the 4
isn't marriageable age back then like 13?
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's of the time. You can't judge them on that because it's of the time. So these 4 perfect people are saved by the angels. As they walk out of the city, one of them turns back and gets turned to a pillar of salt. So she wasn't that perfect, was she?
That's his wife.
Yeah. The other 3 of them say, "Where should we?" Lot says, "Where should we go?" And the angels say, "Well, there's a town here. You can go there. It'll be safe." So they go and spend the night in this town, or city, I think they call it. It's called Little City, its name.
Yeah.
But they don't feel safe. I don't know why. The angels have just told them, but apparently they don't trust angels. So they go off and hide in a cave, where the 2 girls that take it in turns in supposedly raping their father. Their excuse is that their father's the last man on earth. even though they've just come from a city full of people,
Yeah, it's retarded.
where
It's
I'm
just-
assuming there was men.
Maybe it was
So
maybe it was just women. Maybe
No, but I think that last part of the story in the cave, I think again that's another one of these creation stories that has been
It's a
shoved
legend,
in
yeah.
there, because it's very much like the Chinese, the Chinese creation myth of the, the only the certain people being left and having to interbreed to start off the dynasty.
Well, I mean, this is Jewish oral tradition written down as scriptures, like during the Babylonian captivity a few centuries before Christ. I mean, this stuff was just stories that they would tell their children, and they would tell it to their people in like their worship services and stuff. I mean, and so they finally they write them down in the era of the kings and the era of the captivity and stuff. And this is just this ancient oral myth, like it is from any culture. Any culture has these kind of things. It's just that
oral tradition
there's this-
passed down from one to another.
And of course,
Yeah.
part of it was that, I mean, the story is that they were written down after the exile, weren't they? Most of them, but they were found the scrolls. But of course, by the time the exile had finished, no one spoke Aramaic because everyone was speaking Hebrew now. And so when they pulled out the ancient scrolls, which were in Aramaic, they then had to reconstruct what they said to write them down in Hebrew, is my understanding, in the biblical Hebrew. Because that was done. Who did that? Was that under Joshua or? I'm trying to remember who did it. It's actually in Kings. It's written down in Kings somewhere. About they bring in the scrolls, and he says, "Well, write these down so that everybody
that was
knows."
one of the young kings, I believe. I forget his name. I think it started with J.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But so I mean, if that occurred, then my understanding is they'd spent so long in Babylon under exile that Aramaic had disappeared. Aramaic was now a dead language because everyone was speaking this new Hebrew. So when they came back, if they did find these old scrolls that were in Aramaic, it would be the same way as when the King James was written, and they tried to transplant the language onto this ancient language and trying to derive the meaning from it.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been you're not allowed to say it was a telephone whispers or whatever. Even then.
Yeah.
Is Brendan coming on?
Brandon has commented.
Yeah, it seems like he wants to say stuff. It'd be great if he'd come on.
Ah, okay, so he says he can't talk out loud. He doesn't have voice.
Oh,
but he can hear us.
What do you
so-
mean? We heard him, didn't we? Or am I losing it?
Well, we
I
heard
don't
something.
Well, no, it might be any reason.
I haven't
Can't.
actually seen Brandon's picture highlight, as in sound coming from him.
Well, he said, how does that deal with creation? I think we were just saying that it was another mythological tale. It was the tale of Lot, the tale of Job, the tale of Noah and the flood. These are ancient myths, oral myths written down as scriptures and now taken literally by some.
And let's face it,
think
some oral tradition also rings with the grain of truth. We have evidence of supernovas, 1080, written down by the Chinese, actually observed by Native Americans and painted in caves, and they've actually seen reference of where the stars were, where they saw these stars and the constellations that they were describing, and seeing that they're the same thing.
Wait, isn't Lot in Genesis?
Yes,
Well,
but it's the same kind of oral Hebrew myth as the creation story. They're all the same type of story.
I guess, Brendan, if I can bring you up to speed here, what we're talking about is the literal versus the metaphorical as it would apply to Scripture.
someone just
uh,
said in the chat that Aramaic is still spoken.
Sorry, I'm
They
trying to
went
remember.
from
I'm
Hebrew
try-
to Aramaic. They say.
I think it's I'm making a mistake. I think what it is, there was an ancient version before the exile. I'll look it up. Otherwise, I'm going to
you
be
mean
speaking.
ancient Hebrew, I think, or maybe ancient Babylonian? No one speaks
No,
Babylonian. Sumerian?
no, I
Is
did
it
know.
Sumerian?
I'm going to say the wrong
they
thing.
say nobody speaks Latin, and yet people do. It's officially a dead language, but there are people that do actually research the phonetics of Latin, Aramaic, and other dead languages in the world.
If you go
I
to
don't know where
Vatican
they are with
City,
Aramaic, of course, though.
the cash points, or ATMs as you call them in America, in Vatican City are in Latin.
They are?
Yeah.
That must suck if you're a foreigner. You know, you're like, which button does what? Is that true though?
Yeah. Well, it was. I remember it was. I was there quite a few years ago now.
Let me look this up.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look up this on the ancient. I did do it when I was doing my Bible verse by verse. Yeah, you're right, because Aramaic was what they were speaking, a version of what is Koine Aramaic or whatever it was when at the time of the New Testament, wasn't it?
I believe yes. Yeah, it was Aramaic.
Oh, they
And,
speak Latin. You mean they speak Latin? They don't. They're not written in Latin.
It was Aramaic and Koine Greek, I believe.
Yeah. But so, yeah, I don't know who that guest 151 is. Yeah, but it's something that happened around the Babylonian captivity where they lost a language.
Why is the story? What story, DPR?
I'm Toby, so for those who can't hear Brandon, he posted a number of comments in the chat. I didn't pick up on the beginning of them, but he said he can't talk out loud. He says a lot has nothing to do with creation. When asked whether he featured in Genesis, he says he is, but he isn't part of the creation story. He goes on to say his daughters got him drunk and raped him. That isn't supernatural at all. Nor was it for the reason of repopulating. So I asked him, why is the story in the Bible? To which he has responded, I suppose it shows how corruption can happen when living in a morally depraved societies.
Yeah, none of us were saying. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I would also say maybe the moral of the story is that angels are so hot that people would rape them. I mean, I don't know.
Well, nobody's saying that all of Genesis is about creation. I mean, we know full well it isn't. It was only the first few chapters. And
isn't Genesis also about the creation of the Jewish culture, kind of?
Well, Abraham and that kind of thing. But it's also about all kinds of other myths, Lot being one of them, Sodom and Gomorrah being one of them.
But I'm Toby, so this is what I don't understand. You've got a book, and I also have to say that I think we've gone somewhat off the topic of the show, but
yeah, we have.
Let's just go with it. What I don't understand is God has this opportunity to write this book, and yes, okay, it's written by man, but we all know the religious argument, but man's hand is inspired by God, so, you know, the Bible is accurate and true in all regards, even though it clearly isn't. But my point to Brandon would be, what is the point of including this story? Because it isn't a complete historic narrative, we accept that. God has got his wonderful opportunity to give us guidance and tell us what he wants to. Why does he include the story of Lot in his, 800-page message to us? This doesn't seem to make sense to me. And also, I have to pick up on someone who I can't remember, and I apologise.
Brandon, can you mute your mic?
Who mentioned that we mustn't look at the Bible other than metaphorically. Well, again, why? Why would it be that the most almighty or powerful being in the universe simply has no communication skills at all? And if we have to read it metaphorically, then there is nothing whatsoever objective we can possibly take from it, because it is always going to be subjective, which means it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Why did he bother inspiring man to write such a heap of, I'm terribly sorry for the language, shit?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
He asks, what's mythological about Lot? Well, I mean, it's a story about a guy. In a book, the book of Genesis, all about mythology, the mythology of creation, of the flood, of the Tower of Babel. These things didn't happen. These are myths. The myth of Sodom and Gomorrah. These huge,
I'm getting the impression,
talking donkeys.
One at a time.
I'm getting the impression that Brandon actually thinks it's true. Answer that, Brandon. Do you think the story of Lot is true?
It's the mess. Give it to me.
No.
Yes.
Mute your mic there, Strife, for a sec.
That's not my mic.
Oh,
That was Brandon.
that was
I
Brandon.
think we've lost Brandon.
No, I did that because something was happening on his end.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'll bring him back in. I want to know whether he thinks that Lot is factually accurate or not.
Well,
Yeah, really.
he can come in anytime he wants. I just knocked him off, so,
Yeah.
something is
I
happening.
think his mom was having an issue with the tidiness of his room or something.
Yeah.
Those stories in Genesis, I mean, just take the Tower of Babel, that languages came from God, disrupting our languages. I mean, you can tell very easily the history and the evolution of language and where languages came from. I mean, these stories, I mean, they were building a tower to heaven, really? I mean, that's obviously mythological. I mean, it's just...
Not according to Nephilim. Nephilim 3's latest video is a wonderful example of compartmentalization. He includes, I think it is, the title is something like the...
I'd have to
Tower
say,
of Babel
actually,
is
Towers
proved
Towards
by
Heaven
God.
is something that's been repeated a few times in history. I mean, if you
Well,
look at look at the pyramids, if you look at
wait. What did the pyramids have to do with the Tower to Heaven? They were pretty much like saying my penis is bigger than yours. The ancient Egyptians,
there was a huge cultural aspect. I mean, pyramids and ziggurats have been uncovered all over the world. There's great big ones in Europe.
Well,
There's great big ones in South America. Yes, cultures did build huge towers, but these people, this myth was about, all the earth was of one language.
Oh yeah, the
They were going to
specific
build
myth of Babel, I've got you there.
It's a
But
specific myth
it's a
of Babel.
commonality that's rung through history, though. That's what I'm saying.
And that's why I was saying, Lot, the story of Lot, is a story in amongst all kinds of other mythological stories, and the only evidence, the only thing that claims that it was real is the text, this mythological text. I mean, come on, it's like reading Homer or the Iliad or something and saying, yeah, but the one character in there, he was real.
Well, I mean, from what I know about the Egyptian pyramids is that pretty much each pharaoh tried to outdo the other one, so they made bigger and bigger pyramids.
Yes, but the purpose of the pyramid is to make the conduit towards the afterlife, right? And
well, yes, but the reason they're so...
And the reason it comes to an apex at the peak is because they believe that the transport was to celestial heaven.
Now, I don't know about that, but I just know that they pretty much made them bigger because of that whole penis measuring contest they had. I mean,
I think it was a religious. I mean, most societies didn't separate religion and culture. I mean, religion and culture were intertwined.
The pharaoh was like the son of Ra or something like that.
So everything they did was colored by their religious beliefs. So what's the topic again?
Homosexuality.
I thought it was morality as it applied, therefore. So.
Well, I think that was our springboard. We got off on morality and literal interpretation of the Bible because of homosexuality. That's the cornerstone of the issue where fundamentalism
Exactly, because homosexuality might, to some people, be a choice, and to others be something compelling that they can't control, and that it is a spectrum of, I don't know, I guess you could say instincts and choices that brings you to whatever result thereof.
Yeah, where biology is concerned, where instinct and the way we were born is concerned, you can't say that that's wrong. And choice, where that comes into play, we were discussing that earlier, the difference between an idea of sin, where a God is concerned, and the idea of actual secular morality, where the benefit, the good of people are concerned. Those two things are contrasted, and sure, you can make a case that there's this sin thing that there makes, there's this almighty God that gets
yes,
angry.
But these are separate aspects of the whole that we're discussing, right? Exactly. And I mean, we can even add one more thing to it. Can we say that it's wrong in any sense? Well, wrong in terms of propagation of the species, perhaps. Like if you're going to reproduce,
not even that,
homosexuality isn't going to get you there, right?
We've got to a point in our society where we don't need to populate the earth. It's populated. So even where that's concerned, it's not a wrong. The only wrong where homosexuality is concerned is rape. The same thing with heterosexuality.
I guess what I'm saying is, considering the objective of procreation, it's not going to get you there. nuts
No.
about
Well,
the
and that,
say
yeah, but
definitively.
there's a question comes in there is whether genetics is about your specific genetics or your group genetics, and there could be an evolutionary imperative for having homosexuals in the group. There may be a benefit there.
Yeah, I've heard those kind of cases made, and there are some compelling points there.
It's population control, but propagated by the species itself on an
Well, I
evolutionary
don't. I mean,
scale, maybe.
personally, I
don't know.
think it's simply the fact that the way we are made up is means, as somebody said earlier, a spectrum. I've always used the analogy of a graphic equalizer, whereby if you were to write down attributes that make a person, whether it's things like aggression, empathy, sympathy, spiritualism, any list you want, and you put them in a big long line on a graphic equalizer, and then
there's a
just
bell
start
curve.
tuning them up and down,
Yeah.
you're going to get a spectrum from the macho man through to the very feminine female,
Yeah.
and everything in between.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, that's exactly. There's no perfection. We think of things as, oh, this is what a person is, but you know, there's genetically there's diversity, and in everything there's diversity. There's relativity in everything, and so I mean, it's not like, even if homosexuality was, as some would say, detrimental to the reproduction of the species, it's not like, well, then evolution would get rid of it. This is what they say. Well, then why haven't we evolved it out of the species? Well, even in that sense, well, we're not.
We may evolve it
into
because the species.
We're not evolving
might be
into a
perceiving
perfect
itself to be
species.
overpopulated.
Well, we're not
I-
evolving into a perfect species. We're not.
Oh no, we're
you know,
not.
no,
Absolutely not.
these issues of diversity just happen spontaneously. Even
We
in
actually
those
hijacked our own
situations.
evolution a long time ago.
Well, yeah.
Evolution works in the mechanism of natural selection, and now we're promoting the selection of offspring that would otherwise die, except for modern medicine, of socially degenerate methods that would otherwise fail a small population. Are in large population concentrations. I mean, we see a lot of parallels between what happens when you max out and constrict a population of rats and humans. You get more degenerate behavior. There's a parallel there. And we've left our natural evolution a long time ago. I would say, if there's anything, evolution is probably evolving us negatively at this
Well,
point.
I wouldn't agree 100%, because even a very, very small, and I've seen these graphs. It's actually amazing. The smallest little advantage where survival and reproduction is concerned can spread through a population almost entirely in I forget how many, a few thousand generations or something, and take over a population. So it even though we've made huge strides where that's concerned, and I agree with the modern medicine and that kind of thing, keeping people alive that would otherwise die, I mean, there are still those natural selection pressures in the species as a whole. Even if they're minor, they act on the whole species over generations, and don't underestimate sexual selection, which runs in.
Well, there is going to be some beneficial things that still happen, yes, but
Yeah.
it's.
The Old Testament.
I think we're not evolving the same way, and not necessarily to greater good. Not necessarily. We may still be, but
Well,
not necessarily.
it's directionless in that sense.
Exactly.
If you take the idea of eugenics and this perverted idea of Nietzschean Darwinism that the fundamentalists claim led to
Don't forget your pizza,
Hitler.
Morg.
Well, Hitler is actually a perfect candidate for the Old Testament. I mean, what was the Old Testament about? It was racial purity, genocide, Lebensraum. I mean, Hitler could have just claimed he was following the Old Testament. If he'd called himself a Jew.
Those are
I mean,
natural barbaric tendencies in the species.
Exactly.
I mean, it all boils down to killing in the name of, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And in the end, we all know how wrong that is. From suicide bombers to Hitler to every other time, pretty much, that a genocide has been perpetrated, it's been regrettable,
He's taking
and I mean, if you
personal hatred of
taking it
bigotry.
to our discussion here about the gospel, God regretted visiting the calamities upon mankind. He regretted the flood and said that he would never do it again. He regretted
But
burning
wait,
Sodom
wait,
and
but
Gomorrah
wait,
in
It's
the
a
wait,
fire.
rainbow.
wait, but then pretty much later on, he's like, well, fuck it, I'm gonna burn it. Pretty much at the end. That's how he
Yeah,
wants. And
yeah.
Yes, but I'm saying he does
so he ain't
regret it.
bad for.
He does say after the flood that he's never going to do that again.
Well, he's doing something. You think? I mean, a flood. He's gonna kill everybody, though. Technically, I mean, he's gonna kill everyone.
He is the most unpleasant person in all of fiction, the old God of the Old Testament.
I would not want. I would not want him as a neighbor.
No, holy crap!
Just
Have you
imagine.
seen that? I think it's that comedy routine. I think it's Jim Jeffries or something. You know, if God came to a party. Oh my goodness, that's one of the funniest things I ever saw.
Really? I'm going to Google that.
Wait, what was it?
I think it was Jim Jeffries. I think is the comedian. I should look that up. But you know, if God came to a party, you could even play it. It is fantastic.
Yeah, you're right, guest. Darwin was on the Nazis' prescribed list of books or authors.
It's kind of funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it is actually. Jim Jeffries.
I'll play the video if you want.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long it is. It's 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Can you give me a link?
It's
yeah, hang on.
Wait, what's it on? YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, give me a link.
Here. I got it off Google right now.
Just post it into the convo. That'll work.
Yeah. There it is.
Okay.
Because that is extremely relevant to the conversation right now.
Oh, here it is. God goes to
Someone would go, don't look up.
You have to turn it up. Can't hear it.
You'll hear it. You won't hear it, but they
Oh
will.
no.
Oh damn!
Yeah, I know it sucks.
God.
You.
Oh, I get it. Okay. All right.
It's not
Well,
over.
gentlemen, you know, this has been
Hey,
actually
God,
really cool.
how you going?
I am going
didn't know you were
to
gonna
probably
be
come
here.
back on the show at some other
Yeah,
time here,
well,
but I am going to make sure that my little
everywhere,
guy
aren't I? Why the fuck
gets
would
enough
not
of
be
a
here?
nutritious lunch and not just a cardboard cheese pizza
Well, God, it's really great to
refrozen.
have you here. We're
And
really happy you're here.
yeah,
And
it's
God's
good
like,
to meet you all.
Everyone,
Yeah, it was good.
everyone,
All right, we'll talk
Yep,
to you guys
bye.
soon.
please be quiet and look
Bye.
at me
Later.
right now.
I'll talk to you soon, Strive.
I've come down
See ya.
to tell all of you, I want you all to know that I love all of you unconditionally. And they're like, thanks for that, God. We really appreciate that. Then they go back to their party. And then God goes, is that all you have to say? Sorry, God? I just said I love you. Oh, fucking shit, yeah. We love you too. Good, good, good. Because you know if you don't, you'll fucking burn, right? Yes, God, we really love you. We really love you. Do you love any other gods? No, we don't. We really don't. Okay, cool. Sorry, everyone. I'm sorry. I've had too much to drink. I'm sorry. And then they go back to their party, and obviously God's not getting enough attention. He pipes up again. Everybody, one last thing. I know you all said you love me, and that's really cool of you. I want you to do one more thing for me now. I want to point out that you won't burn if you don't do this, but it would go a long way not to burning if you get my fucking drift. Right? It would be really great if you could all sing songs about me. And they're like, sorry, God? I made the fucking world. Just sing a fucking song. What's the problem? And they're like, yeah, we can do this, can't we, gang? Let's sing some songs for God. And they start singing some gospel music. And they begin with, God's fucking digging it. He's just... Because let's not forget that God's a white guy. Then halfway through this song, God starts to turn. Everyone stops singing. Who's the guy in the pink shirt who's enjoying singing? Oh, that's Brian and his boyfriend. faggots. But God, calm down. You just said you love everyone, not faggots, I didn't. And then people are trying to calm him down. He's like, don't you fucking touch me! Don't touch me, you faggot lover! They're like, God, it's probably best you just leave this party. You're all gonna fucking burn, all you fucking cunts. And he goes outside and he's trying to calm himself down. I fucking hate faggots. I couldn't be clearer about this. It's in my book, for fuck's sake. Everyone's got the book. No one's fucking read the book. Everyone's got the book. Then he passes like a young couple holding hands. He's like, hey, how you doing? You see that tree? I fucking made that shit. Hey, wait. Are you two married? No. Well, don't fuck each other. I hate young people fucking, and I hate faggots. I also hate people eating shrimp. I mentioned that 8 times in my book, where I only mentioned twice that I hate homosexuals. But people seem to really enjoy eating shrimp, so I've forgotten about that rule. But I'm still very certain I hate faggots. Then everyone's like, I'm so happy to have him in my life. This constant glow I have in my heart. My pet hate.
Okay. So what did you think of that?
Who, me?
Well, DPR and Baud2Bits, since I'm not sure if they've seen it before, and I've never seen it either.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have seen it, yeah.
Well, have you seen it, DPR?
No, that was my first time. It seemed a lot of fun.
So God mentioned 6 times in his book that he hates shellfish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny, and he only mentions homosexuals twice. That's a funny fact, isn't it?
Well, I think it's more than twice individually, but you get the idea. It's more times about shellfish.
But he created shellfish as well.
Yeah, so why the fuck did he create shellfish, man, if he fucking says don't eat them?
Yeah, he's a weirdo. He's just
They
like
look pretty.
yeah, he's just like you know that little bit on the end of your penis. Just cut it off. I fucking hate that thing. Seriously,
I think God's got a little bipolarness. He's like I made this thing, now I fucking hate this thing I made. Like, I mean,
Well, he did. That's why he drowned everything.
Yeah. He's like I made this dog.
It's what I find interesting is like God is all powerful. He makes everything perfect, even though there are some inherent design flaws in his perfection, such as a tree of knowledge and a talking serpent and imbuing Adam and Eve with curiosity. It was bound to go wrong. But he then drowns everything to start afresh. And he still can't get it right, because the first thing that Noah does when he gets off the ark is build a vineyard, get pissed, and he's caught masturbating by his sons. This God, if it did exist, would be the most incompetent entity ever.
I would not.
He's had a couple of opportunities to get this right, and he keeps on failing.
fucking it up.
But he's omnipotent, so he's omniscient, so he knows he's going to fuck up before he does.
Yeah, I mean that's the funny thing. Like if I had to pick between having God and someone who I know is totally incompetent, I would choose the guy who's totally incompetent because God knows he's totally incompetent. The guy who does that just
It acts like he isn't, though.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Very serious question. If God was your next door neighbour,
Okay.
and it came to Christmas, first, would you put up a tree? That's a side issue, because I don't understand why Norse spruces have got anything to do with the nativity. But you're being charitable and you want to take him a present. What Christmas present would you take God?
Wait, you mean give God?
Well, God only wants you to worship and serve him. So that's the only present.
I give him nothing. I'd give him nothing. I'd say, hey, you know what a present is? Me not wishing you were dead.
It's like, if you don't sing songs about me, you're gonna burn.
Yeah.
Someone spoke Mer. I suppose
Mer.
that makes sense, but I guess he doesn't want for anything except our utter obedience.
Yes. Subservience and yes, worship.
And that's what, I mean, Mary and Joseph, they have to go and stay in a stable. The night after they stay in the stable, some twat turns up with a lump of gold for them. Now, if these men were that wise, they could have turned up the night before, and they wouldn't have had to stay in a stable, would they?
Yeah. And the whole thing was written to fit the Old Testament pseudo-prophecies that were, made to fit these other stories as well. So, I don't know, it was just like he was rejected by his own people, blah, 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 that kind of crap.
That's... Oh, yeah, but the best one was that, and I can't remember which gospel it is in, but... because in the original it says that there's a prophecy that he'll ride into town on a mule, the son of an ass or something, and so in one of the gospels the disciples go out and get a mule and an ass and bring them in, or a colt and an ass, and bring them in, and Jesus rides into town astride both of them. I mean,
what does that mean though? Like, does that mean like is he so fat? Is he so fat that he needs to have two horses under his butt?
No, it was a colt, the foal of an ass. It was a foal. It was a young one, and so it was about the prophecy in the Old Testament. Your king comes riding on a foal of an ass.
But he ends up with
I have
two.
to say again, if you're going to make an entrance, you're going to do it in style.
Yeah.
Nothing more says
on
that
the back of a
than a
donkey
nice...
doesn't seem to be sort of like the most powerful entity's sort of like way of making a statement.
Riding a lion.
Why didn't he have a feisty stallion?
Yeah, it was only because the Old Testament said it one way, and they wanted to make it seem like a fulfillment
and
of prophecy.
also, I think weren't donkeys and asses? I mean, weren't asses and mules pretty much like the cheapest animal you can get? I think
so. Yeah.
Yeah, like the horse, like horses.
Why didn't he ride a chicken into Jerusalem then?
Well, that's one big chicken.
Well, the Gospel of Ken Ham would have him riding a velociraptor.
Yeah.
A T-Rex.
He's like, if you don't praise me, I'll get this thing to fucking sick you. Yeah. Do we have any questions? Does anyone in the chat room want to come on the show anytime? No. So, Atheist Coffee, why don't you tell us about your time as a fundamentalist?
Well, I got into that a little bit in regards to, believing the text. The text is everything. So if the text says that homosexuality is an abomination, then there you go. I mean, my family converted when I was 9 years old, and I gravitated naturally towards a very literal, zealous, fundamentalist Christianity, and was involved in that for quite a long time. And young Earth creationist, kind of anti-homosexual, no sex before marriage, everything that goes along with that kind of literal interpretation of the Bible. And and so deconverting a few years ago, I've been trying to kind of make up for some of those things along the way, and especially I see the damage that the anti-gay bullying has caused many, especially young people who are just confused and their communities. Look at these religious communities in the States that are taken over with the kind of fundamentalism I was involved in, and these gay teens are getting bullied in school, and some of them have committed suicide. And I mean, there's a real cost to, like we mentioned earlier in the show, the homosexuals that have been executed in other countries for being homosexuals. So there's a real cost, a real human cost to this kind of bigotry, this kind of fundamentalism, and I've been trying to kind of do what I can.
So you've been trying to make rights of your wrongs.
Well, I don't think you can really. I mean, what I said, I said a lot of things. I taught in churches. I was a pastor. I was a youth pastor, and I was very vocal.
You should have stayed in the pastor and saying, shh, leave.
Yeah, no. I've been trying to kind of combat it ever since I got out of it, because especially those things that cause real harm. And the young earth creationism that's so anti-science, it sees science as the enemy. It sees it as a bad thing. And just because, scientific evidence has been displacing the God of the gaps ever since Galileo. So, anyways,
isn't it? Whilst it's, on the one hand they despise science, they utilize every single benefit that science gives them.
Yes, they do.
Looks like we just lost Baud2Bits.
And when people say they're sick, they're in the hospital, they get treated for cancer or whatever, and they get better, they praise God. God's great. God healed me up. When without modern medicine, without the scientific advances in medicine, that person would have died. I mean,
yeah, I actually once put that general issue to Valentine X, and he came up with a classic response that one would imagine. Isn't God absolutely wonderful for giving mankind the ability to discover how to treat cancer?
And why did he wait? That's my question.
Yes.
Why did the deity wait for thousands of years? Why didn't he put it in the text? Why didn't he say, you know what, it isn't demons, it's germs? Why didn't he say it?
No, that's kind of like the thing,
preposterous.
like we didn't we bring this up, DPR, yesterday with Jason Burns about, well, if God exists, he's like this ultimate database of knowledge because he knows everything by definition. So couldn't the people back then, oh, finally Steve's in, couldn't they finally just ask the answers to anything they want? Kind of like, instead of doing science, they could just say, what's the cure for cancer? God tells them.
Yeah.
Well, actually, to be fair, God does give some medical advice in the Bible. One in particular is in relation to leprosy. And I can assure you that if you follow that advice, you will not be cured of leprosy. It involves the virgin blood of a bird, and also painting this blood around the house and stuff like this. It's somewhere in the Bible. I'm sure I could find it very shortly. But yeah, God's medical advice is not only inaccurate, it's dangerous.
Maybe it was for he's like, I hate the fags so much, I hope they listen to this so they won't fucking, get cured of leprosy. Maybe that's what it was. So like only the faithful knew that don't use this stuff, I'll talk to you.
Or maybe it was just metaphorical.
Well, yeah, maybe that.
Hello.
Hey Steve, you're late.
Yes, I am slightly. I'm sorry. Dragged on.
I've just had a Twitter from Answers in Genesis pop up. The truth of the Bible is obvious to anyone willing to fairly investigate it.
Wait. You were twittering between Answers in Genesis?
No, my Twitter goes all the time, and I follow them. I've got a quote on Zechariah. It's in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. It says, "Thy king cometh unto thee; he is just, and having salvation, lowly, and riding upon an ass, and upon a colt, the foal of an ass." I mean, and that's quite normal in the biblical type poetry to repeat yourself. There's nothing unusual about that until you get to Matthew chapter 21, where Jesus says, saying unto them, "Go into the village over against you, and straightway ye shall find an ass tied, and a colt with her. Loose them, and bring them unto me."
It sounds like you're stealing them. It sounds like you're stealing them. Like just go into town, take them, and hush, pretty much.
Yeah, and he says,
disciples went and did as Jesus commanded them, and brought the ass and the colt, and put them on them clothes, and they set him thereon.
Yeah. Another gospel says that if anybody, he gives them instructions, if anybody questions you, why are you taking these? Say, the Lord hath need of them. He gives them if somebody says, hey, stop stealing those donkeys, you're supposed to say, no, God wants these, and keep walking.
Do you know what I heard the other day? One of these pastors, and I can't remember which one it is, and he's saying that Jesus was a capitalist. And his argument, and this is how you can distort the scripture, his argument is that the disciples are saying, because we're the first ones who followed you, will we get the best spot in heaven and all the rest of it. So he gives them the parable about the vineyard and the owner. And these guys go and they start work at 6 a.m, and they're working on through. And then during the day, more people come to the vineyard. and they work until, there's some people only work the last hour. And when the day's finished and the foreman comes up and the owner says, pay them all a denarii, and he pays each of them a denarii, and the people who've been there all day are moaning, and the bloke says, well, but that's what I offered you. I offered you a denarii to work all day, so I haven't given you anything less than you deserve. The people who come last, I gave them a denarii. And the whole parable, obviously, is Jesus saying it doesn't matter when you come to me or when you come, you will receive the same.
So
Don't
wait.
expect anything special. But this guy said that what Jesus was saying in the parable was it's up to a man who owns something how much he gives away. And so Jesus was a capitalist.
No, it was
This is
the
what
New Testament is
happens when you
completely
don't
socialist.
believe.
Wait, my question is, like, with that whole thing, it seems like to me, like, you know how they say, like, oh, well, you should find Jesus before the tribulations. Well, can't you find Jesus during the tribulations and you'll be fine? If that's pretty much what it means?
Jesus
doesn't
said to
mean
sell all that
anything.
you have and
It
give to
doesn't
the
mean
poor.
anything. What you've got is a parable which can, because it is a parable, be interpreted in any possible way you want to justify any belief
just-
you
just-
have.
No,
Wait,
it's very
stop.
obvious what it means.
The point of these
We need
parables are
to,
simply to justify a belief that someone had at the time.
we need to
This
end
is
the
why
show.
one person can interpret it one way and another.
We need to end the show, so final statements, and we'll do an after show to continue on, if that's okay, since we're almost hit the 2-hour mark. Okay?
Okay.
So, Atheist Coffee?
Well, it's been a great discussion, and I think we've covered everything. I don't really have anything to add to the things that I've said there, but I'll let somebody else maybe will come up with something more interesting.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm just going to apologise for being late, basically, because I have no idea what's been going on otherwise.
Okay, Baud?
God put a rainbow in the sky after the flood. He wouldn't have done that if he hated homosexuals.
DPR?
Well, we have moved dramatically off topic, I think, but bringing it back to where we started. Why do people have an issue with homosexuals? I think that only those that have an issue with them are members of extreme right-wing political parties or the religious, whether that be the Christian religion or the Islamic religion. And it's a shame, is it not, that during the course of the show not one theist of whatever denomination would actually come on and justify this position. And as I said some hours ago, I think now, it doesn't surprise me because I think deep down that they know their position is unjustifiable, save for reliance on an old book. And in this country, as in others, things have moved on, and let us hope that they continue to progress to a state where we can all live harmoniously, without bigotry and without discrimination.
This is the LyingGhostshow, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes to continue with an after show. So thank you for viewing. Signing off.